Welcome to another episode of Worldly Wise, the Federal's weekly program that dissects and brings you up to speed on international news. I'm your host, K.S. Dakshinamurthy. In this episode, we look at Trump, his claims of ending the Ukraine war, and what his chances are in actually succeeding. So, former US President Donald Trump is given to making bombastic promises. The latest is he will end the messy and prolonged Russia Ukraine war within 24 hours of taking over as president. If he wins in November, that is. As if to show that he means business, Trump recently telephoned Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and said he would bring about an agreement between the two countries at war. Can Trump actually do it? Does the situation on the ground allow for such a possibility? Nearly 2.5 years since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th, 2022, the war seems to be heading nowhere. Thousands have been killed and injured. UN figures place civilian casualties at over 30,000. Key Ukrainian cities, including Mariupol, Marianka, Bakhmut, have been destroyed. Some 6.5 million or 65 lakh people have fled the country, particularly from areas along the eastern belt bordering Russia, where fighting is fierce. Around 4 million or 40 lakhs are internally displaced. Reports estimate that Russia too has suffered casualties in the range of 500,000 soldiers. Though Moscow has the upper hand as of now, Putin has not got away so easily with extensive loss of military equipment besides human losses. But there is no let up. Russia has massed thousands of soldiers who are pushing into Ukraine despite severe resistance. So, how is a ceasefire, let alone a peace agreement, possible given the severity of the conflict? Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is clear that Russia has to withdraw from areas it has captured and holding. Not just the areas Russia is occupying from the current invasion, but those it forcibly took over in 2014 in Donetsk and Luhansk in the eastern Donbas region. And of course, the strategic Crimean Peninsula that Russia annexed in 2014. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has said he will not retreat from the current position. Putin intends to use the occupied territory in the Donbas region to create a buffer zone between Russia and Ukraine. This is intended to stretch 1,000 kilometers all the way across the eastern and southern border between the two countries. Putin has demanded that Ukraine sign an undertaking that it will statutorily promise never to join NATO or host the military of any other country on its soil, including conducting military exercises. Hungarian President Viktor Orban, who recently met Putin and Zelensky, was quoted as saying their stances were very far from one another. So we can imagine the extent of differences between them. So, how will Trump reconcile the positions of the two countries? Is the US in a position to arm twist Putin? Favoring Trump is his known proximity to Putin at a personal level. Trump himself has publicly said he shares a good relationship with both Zelensky and Putin and will use it to end the war. And Trump has also hinted that Zelensky needs to come midway and strike a compromise with Putin. Similarly, the Russian president too will have to ease his conditions and at least withdraw to a pre 2022 position, that is, the position that existed before the current invasion. Putin in the past has said he doesn't mind Ukraine joining the European Union, but definitely not NATO. And besides these two, you also have the European bloc to reckon with. Trump, in his first term as president, expressed disdain towards NATO, the military grouping of Second World War vintage. His grouse was that it is the US that financially supports the group, while his European allies have not contributed proportionally. In fact, he even once threatened to walk out of NATO. If America's European allies agree to back down and let Ukraine go ahead with a deal that may permanently prevent it from joining NATO, Trump has a chance to succeed. On the other hand, there is a slim chance that NATO might decide to continue backing Ukraine and the war even if Trump backs off. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said so last week, but that possibility is remote given that US's allies in Europe in post Second World War have rarely acted on their own. So the ball will fall squarely in the court of Ukraine's Zelensky, as his country stands to lose a lot in terms of territory and much else if the war continues. He will also have to answer a section of Ukrainians who may question the rationale of ceding territory to Russia, especially when so many have sacrificed their lives fighting the Russians. For Putin, an end to the war with his new possessions largely with him, a deal would be very tempting. But will he back off without getting an assurance from Ukraine on not joining NATO in perpetuity? These are tough questions that only a hard negotiation can resolve. Reports say Zelensky is preparing for November to come up with a fresh peace deal. Putin, too, is likely waiting to see if Trump wins the US elections. Whether Trump manages to swing a deal or not, the Ukraine landscape is set to see changes in a post Biden world.